Without a shirt, without cash, no services provided, please leave. The barista shouted as the man grabbed his duffel bag and hobbled toward the exit. Onlookers gawked, a few chuckled, yet assistance was nowhere to be found. However, at 8 a.m. the following morning, 5 military trucks surrounded the block, and the man who had been expelled emerged in full uniform. Have you ever witnessed someone being embarrassed solely due to their appearance? Give a nod if you have. Welcome to Great Man. Let's explore the truth behind what occurred. Thomas Miller never intended to make a stop at the cafe. At 61, with a spine that served as a constant reminder of every mile he'd marched and every soldier he'd carried, he chose to remain unnoticed. However, the unexpected rainstorm had provided him with few options. The trendy downtown cafe was the sole refuge within his restricted walking distance. He stood in the doorway, water cascading from his gray beard and worn army jacket. The worn duffel bag, a faded olive green with fraying straps, rested heavily on his shoulder. He paused, sensing an immediate discomfort in the polished atmosphere filled with wooden tables and customers engrossed in their laptops. The aroma of premium coffee and warm pastries enveloped the cozy atmosphere, sharply contrasting with the chilly rain trickling through his tattered boots. Thomas inhaled deeply and entered, deliberately selecting a cozy corner table, distanced from the majority of patrons. A young barista with styled hair approached, casting a glance at Thomas's drenched appearance with barely concealed disdain. "How may I assist you?" His tone implied a lack of support. "Just a water, please," Thomas said softly, "until the rain passes." The barista lifted an eyebrow. "A minimum purchase is necessary for seating. This is not a shelter." Thomas nodded, his fingers moving slowly as he reached into his pocket. "I can handle a small coffee, then." He set down 3 crumpled dollar bills on the table, almost half of what he had left. The barista did not reach for the money. "That won't be enough for our specialty coffee." His voice had grown, intentionally amplified for the nearby tables to catch every word. "Without a purchase, there's no seat available. This is not a shelter." The cafe fell silent, conversations halting as eyes shifted to the unfolding confrontation. Thomas sensed the intensity of their gazes. The same gazes he'd sensed since coming back home, bearing wounds that were unseen yet never ceased to ache. "I see," Thomas replied, gradually getting to his feet. "I'll wait outside beneath the awning." As he reached for his duffel, a well-dressed man at the next table scrunched up his nose and declared loudly, "He stinks. Do you not detect that scent?" The sound of laughter echoed softly in the cafe. Thomas lowered his gaze, concentrating on collecting his bag. The bag that had been with him through 2 tours, 3 surgeries, and countless nights spent under bridges when his disability check couldn't quite cover both medication and rent. The barista navigated the counter with an unmistakable air of hostility. "Sir, I must request that you exit at once. Your actions are causing a disruption for our customers." Thomas chose not to engage in a dispute. He didn't ever do that. Disputes drained energy he simply didn't have. He hobbled toward the door, yet the barista showed little patience. He swiftly stepped forward, grasping Thomas's elbow and guiding him toward the exit. The abrupt motion threw Thomas off his equilibrium. His duffel fell, striking the ground with enough impact to scatter its contents. Among the few possessions that tumbled onto the polished concrete floor was a small mesh bag holding something that glimmered in the light. A purple heart medal, with its unique shape and unmistakable purple-edged ribbon. A woman at a nearby table observed it, her coffee cup pausing midway to her lips. For a brief instant, a flicker of acknowledgement appeared on her face, but she swiftly turned away, hesitant to engage. The barista seemed oblivious or indifferent. He kicked the scattered items back into the bag with his shoe and handed it to Thomas. "Gather your belongings and leave." Thomas knelt with discomfort, picking up the medal and placing it gently back into the mesh bag. His movements were deliberate, maintaining a sense of dignity in the face of humiliation. No one in the busy cafe stepped forward to assist. Stepping back into the pouring rain, he clutched the purple heart inside his jacket to shield it from the downpour, while the cafe door closed behind him with a sense of finality. If you think that respect should not be based on looks, this channel is for you. Remain. The rain continued unabated. After 20 minutes of waiting under the inadequate awning, Thomas opted to head to the public park just 2 blocks away. At least the gazebo there could provide improved shelter. He walked deliberately down the street, each step a careful balance of resolve and discomfort. The park was wonderfully quiet. The rain had driven off the typical throng. Thomas chose a dry spot in the wooden gazebo and gently placed his duffel down. Finally enjoying some privacy, he unzipped the bag and examined its valuable contents. The water had not seeped through the outer canvas, keeping his few belongings dry. He retrieved the mesh bag that held his Purple Heart, given to him after the helicopter extraction mishap in Afghanistan. The metal captured the faint light that seeped through the rain clouds, its purple center standing out strikingly against the silver outline. Next was a folded American flag and a plastic protective sleeve, the very one that had been draped over his best friend's coffin before being presented to a family who later sent it to Thomas with a note, "He would want you to have this. You were closer to him than we could ever be." At the bottom of the bag rested a well-loved photograph in a modest frame. 12 men in desert camouflage, with their arms around each other's shoulders, stand proudly in front of a transport helicopter. Thomas softly cleared the dust from the glass using his thumb. Just 5 of those men made it back home. Finally, he took out an envelope that held his latest letter from his daughter, Emily. Their relationship had faced challenges since his return. His PTSD, her feelings of resentment regarding his absence during childhood, his struggle to maintain stable employment or housing. She corresponded each month from her college dorm in a different state, the letters polished yet steady. "Is that you, Ray? Alpha 9? He was taken aback by the voice. Thomas glanced up to notice a man in a worn coat making his way toward the gazebo, with his own possessions in a shopping cart stationed close by. "Is that you, Henry?" Thomas narrowed his eyes, identifying a fellow veteran he had sometimes seen at the VA hospital. Henry ascended the gazebo steps, his movements revealing comparable injuries. "I thought that was you. It's been some time since the support group." Thomas acknowledged with a nod. He stopped going to the weekly meetings after losing his apartment, feeling too embarrassed to acknowledge that he had become one of the homeless veterans, even with all the programs that were meant to prevent such a situation. "Are you still spending time with your daughter?" Henry inquired, easing onto the bench with a sigh that hinted at well-known discomforts. Thomas acknowledged this with a simple no. "She's in college now and thriving. She knows about." Henry made a vague gesture towards the duffel bag and Thomas's clear predicament. "Numerical value. She definitely won't." Thomas's tone was definitive and unyielding. "She is making progress and creating her own path. I refuse to be a weight on her shoulders." Henry acknowledged with a nod. Numerous individuals made comparable decisions, shielding their loved ones from the truth of what they had become following their service. On his phone, an old flip model reserved solely for emergencies, a notification illuminated the small screen. A viral video has captured attention. Thomas seldom browsed social media, yet the urge to alleviate his boredom and distract himself from the persistent ache in his back prevailed. He clicked the link and was met with the sight of his own embarrassment. A patron in the cafe captured his removal on video, complete with sarcastic remarks. The caption stated, "Veteran in need of help, see this individual face the consequences." It had already garnered thousands of views along with a barrage of hateful comments, casting doubt on his status as a genuine veteran. In a cozy suburban home, a man named Michael Harrison casually scrolled through his phone while participating in a tedious conference call. The video algorithm recommended a drama about a homeless veteran, and he clicked on it out of sheer curiosity. His face went pale as he identified the man being led out of the cafe. "Sergeant Miller," he whispered, suddenly rising and exiting the meeting, leaving his bewildered colleagues gazing after him. Michael Harrison always remembered the sergeant who had carried him 2 miles through rugged mountain terrain after an IED destroyed their transport and shattered Michael's leg. The same sergeant who had returned for 3 additional wounded men, even with his own injuries. The sergeant, whose spine had suffered permanent damage during the ordeal, faced a situation that the military doctors attempted to minimize while handling his discharge. Michael's hands trembled as he entered a number he hadn't used in years. "Hey Marcus, it's Michael. Did you catch what happened to Sergeant Miller?" As night fell, the video circulated among private veterans groups nationwide, provoking a response that starkly contrasted with the public ridicule it had initially received. Phones illuminated, messages shared, arrangements made. And Thomas, oblivious to the brewing tempest, passed the night on a park bench, his duffel acting as both pillow and safeguard, the Purple Heart nestled against his chest like a protective charm. He never pleaded. He always spoke calmly. He just departed, carrying a medal in his pocket and rain in his shoes. If you've ever witnessed someone being disrespected for their appearance, type dignity. The city awoke to a clear dawn, a refreshing change after the heavy rain of the day before. Thomas rose with the sun, just as he had done every day since his basic training many years ago. Every movement was met with resistance from his body, as the damp weather had taken its toll on his joints overnight. He utilized the park's public restroom to freshen up, washing his face and brushing his teeth, striving to uphold his dignity despite the constraints he faced. Years of military discipline were evident in the way he neatly folded his few belongings and systematically repacked his duffel. The morning shift was starting at the cafe across from the park. The barista from yesterday was outside, preparing the tables and whistling while he arranged the chairs, seemingly unaware of the old man he had humiliated. The initial customers arrived gradually, placing orders for intricate coffee beverages and browsing their phones as they waited. The first military truck went unnoticed until it made a turn onto the street, halting right in front of the cafe. Its diesel engine rumbled, creating vibrations that resonated through the store's windows. A second truck emerged from the opposite direction, followed by a third. In just a few minutes, 5 Army transport vehicles had successfully closed off the entire block. Pedestrians paused, bewildered. Cafe patrons crowded by the windows. The barista remained still, coffee pot in hand, as the uniformed men and women started to step out of the vehicles. It was evident from their age range and the diversity of their uniforms that they were not on active duty. Some donned desert camouflage from the campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan. Some individuals donned vintage battle dress uniforms from previous conflicts. Every uniform showcased combat patches, unit insignia, and an array of ribbons that narrated tales of service and sacrifice. At the forefront was Lieutenant Laura Carla Rodriguez. Her salt and pepper hair was neatly pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform remained impeccable, even a decade after her active duty. She moved with the assured presence of someone familiar with leadership. With a commanding voice, she called out, and 50 veterans instantly fell into flawless formation on the sidewalk, forming a line that extended the entire length of the block. Customers poured out of the cafe and nearby shops, phones held high to capture the surprising military spectacle. In the midst of the crowd, Thomas stood, lured from the park by the noise, his expressions evolving from bewilderment to understanding as he noticed familiar faces in the assembly. Laura Rodriguez advanced, her voice resonant and authoritative, as she spoke to the attentive audience. Yesterday, at this establishment, a man faced public humiliation and was expelled due to his appearance. That man, she indicated straight at Thomas in the crowd, is Sergeant First Class Thomas Miller, the former leader of Alpha 9 Rescue Team, 10th Mountain Division. Whispers flowed among the spectators. The barista who had thrown Thomas out turned noticeably pale. This cafe, Laura Rodriguez continued, her voice resonating down the block, turned away a man who once carried 4 injured soldiers on his back through hostile territory, under enemy fire, after their vehicle was struck by an IED. A man who declined evacuation until every member of his team was confirmed safe, leading to lasting spinal injuries that the VA has yet to adequately address. With a wave of her hand, 2 veterans moved forward, bringing with them a sizable wooden sign that they placed right at the entrance of the cafe. This place turned away a hero. We recall. The crowd fell into silence, with many putting down their phones as the weight of what they were experiencing began to register. The barista entered, his cheeks tinged with a deep shade of red. I had no idea, he said hesitantly. How am I supposed to know? He remained silent about his status as a veteran. Laura Rodriguez regarded him with an unwavering look. That's precisely the point, my boy. True heroes often go unnoticed. They keep their achievements discreetly hidden. They bear their suffering in silence and seek nothing in return. From the rear of the crowd, Thomas made his way forward, the veterans immediately stepping aside to clear a path for him. Even with his tattered clothing and scruffy appearance, he carried himself with a dignity that demanded respect. This isn't necessary, he said softly to Laura Rodriguez. I don't deserve all this hassle. With all due respect, Sergeant, she said clearly for everyone to hear, you don't have the authority to determine your value to us. The barista walked over to Thomas, trembling noticeably. I sincerely apologize for my behavior towards you. Before he could finish, Thomas interrupted him with a lifted hand. No need to apologize to me, he said, his voice deep yet unmistakably clear. Express regret to the uniform. Express regret to all who have donned it, regardless of visibility. Michael Harrison advanced from the formation, his prosthetic leg hidden beneath his dress pants. He declared to the crowd that Sergeant Miller had saved his life. I was a 20-year-old young adult bleeding out in the mountains. He transported me for 2 miles despite having a compromised spine. After that, he returned for 3 more of us. One by one, other veterans came forward to share their stories, not all directly involving Thomas, but each emphasizing the unseen connections that linked those who had served and the hidden scars many of them brought back home. Inside the cafe, staff hurriedly took down the no shirt, no service sign from the window. The manager arrived, extending an invitation for complimentary coffee to all veterans in attendance. Laura Rodriguez graciously but resolutely declined. We didn't come for coffee or apologies, she stated. We gathered here because when one among us faces disrespect, it affects us all, and far too many of our brothers and sisters have been rendered invisible after they have laid down their uniforms. By noon, the military trucks left, yet the effect of their presence lingered. Thomas was enveloped by his former comrades in arms, each eager to offer their assistance in some manner. Michael loaded the duffel bag into his car while they discussed how to get the rest of his belongings from the storage unit that he could no longer afford. The narrative was already evolving across the internet. The mocking video was overshadowed by clips of the veterans' reactions, featuring hashtags such as Respect the Uniform and Invisible Heroes. Not everyone noticed the medal, but they noticed the man. If you think that's sufficient, allow YouTube to guide you back here once more. A week later, the cafe had experienced a remarkable change, in both its appearance and its mindset. A new sign was displayed prominently in the window, Respect all, ask before you judge. Staff participated in sensitivity training, and a lasting discount program was created for veterans and first responders. Thomas never went back there. Even with numerous invitations and heartfelt apologies from the owner, he chose the serene path of moving ahead instead of reliving the embarrassment. The apartment that Michael and the others organized for him was simple yet tidy, a 1-bedroom unit in a mixed-income building, featuring an elevator that saved his injured spine from the challenge of stairs. After 18 months, Thomas finally experienced the comfort of a real bed, complete with a door he could shut and a refrigerator stocked with food that wasn't salvaged. He continued to find it difficult to accept assistance. Years of independence and a strong military culture made it seem as though showing vulnerability was a sign of weakness. Each morning, a new veteran would show up in the building's lobby. Some he recognized from service, while others were linked solely by the bond of uniform, eager to share breakfast or provide rides to VA appointments. The cafe, in the meantime, had transformed into an unforeseen destination for visitors. Veterans from all over the city made it a priority to visit every day, ordering coffee and taking up the same corner table where Thomas had been denied service. The incident was never discussed directly between them. They merely occupied the space, a subtle reminder that their existence persisted even when overlooked. This morning, a young father and his 7-year-old son sat close to a trio of veterans. The boy observed with keen interest as the men greeted each other with a salute before taking their seats. Dad, the boy asked in a voice that carried to the nearby tables, why do they salute when there's no flag? The father weighed his response thoughtfully, mindful of the veteran's attention. At times, he eventually responded, a man represents the flag. The veterans acknowledged with a nod, and one gave the boy a gentle smile, possibly the first time he had smiled in public since coming back from his last tour. In a small park near his new apartment, Thomas sat, carefully sorting through mail that had been forwarded from several temporary addresses. Among the official VA correspondence and bills was an envelope handwritten in his daughter's recognizable script. He opened it with care, revealing 2 pages filled with Emily's tidy handwriting. Dear Dad, I came across the video from the cafe and noticed the veterans arriving afterward. I knew it was you right away. Why didn't you mention that things had become so difficult? After all these months of correspondence, you never revealed that you were without a home. You mentioned exploring various neighborhoods, and I thought you were doing well. I have decided to withdraw from my classes for this semester. Please try not to be upset. I can sign up again later. I'll be home next week. You're not by yourself, Dad. You were never that. For all those years, I felt a deep frustration that you were absent during my childhood. I have a clearer understanding of what you were bearing and what you continue to bear. Allow me to assist in carrying the burden. I adore you. Emily Thomas read the letter twice, then meticulously folded it back into its envelope. For the first time since the incident, a wave of emotion broke through his meticulously held composure. A solitary tear glided down his weathered cheek, only to be swiftly brushed away. His phone rang, the old flip model he still favored over the smartphone Michael had attempted to give him. It was Laura Rodriguez, reaching out as she routinely did every few days. Rodriguez, the housing is more than sufficient, Thomas stated directly. Please stop calling. That's not the reason I'm calling, Sergeant, she responded. The office of the mayor has made contact. They aim to create a veteran outreach program, provide permanent housing assistance, and offer employment opportunities specifically designed for combat-related disabilities, among other initiatives. They require advisors who grasp the genuine challenges. That sounds wonderful, Thomas replied with a hint of caution. Wishing you the best with that. They have paid positions available. Your name has been submitted. Thomas began to decline his instinctive reaction to any type of charity. Before you dismiss it, Rodriguez continued, think about this. How many more are still out there? How many will lack 50 veterans to stand up for them? This is no longer about you, Sergeant. This pertains to each and every one of them. The park was bustling with children who had just been let out from a nearby elementary school. Thomas observed their play, unaware of the intricate realities of the adult world that lay ahead. My daughter is coming home, he finally said. That's great news, Rodriguez responded. Make sure she attends the meeting. Allow her to witness what her father is creating. That evening, as the sunset bathed the sky in hues of orange and purple, Thomas made a call to his daughter, marking the first time he had reached out in years. He expressed his anticipation of seeing her when she picked up the phone, adding that he believed he had discovered something beneficial to engage in nearby. The evening shift was wrapping up at the cafe across town. The barista who had asked Thomas to leave was tidying up the tables when an elderly man in a tattered jacket walked in. The barista felt a surge of tension, caught between his new training and ingrained instincts. Just as he was about to respond, a familiar veteran rose and made his way toward the newcomer. The veteran inquired about Vietnam, his gaze drawn to the pin on the man's jacket. The elderly gentleman nodded in agreement. The veteran invited, motioning towards their table. I'll treat you to coffee. The barista observed the exchange and silently delivered a fresh pot without needing to be prompted. The lesson was understood, not via sensitivity training or new policies, but by observing the unbreakable connections among those who had served, no matter when or where. As night descended, the city maintained its usual pace. However, in subtle ways, transformation was occurring. The unseen were starting to be seen. The overlooked were being acknowledged. Thomas Miller, getting his apartment ready for his daughter's visit, finally finished unpacking his duffel bag. He set his Purple Heart on the bedside table, keeping it in view as a reminder of his current value rather than past suffering. Some individuals display their medals proudly on their chest. Some hold on to them in their pockets, as the world has ceased to pay attention. When an individual takes a stand, an entire legion may be inspired to join in. Have you ever formed an opinion about someone based solely on their appearance? Please share your story with us below. We are attentive to your needs. Join Great Man, where quietude fades and honor takes the forefront.